Welcome, fam, to another episode of Good, Bad, and Ugly with Jose. I have an awesome guest today, a good friend of mine who's here in Colorado with me, Jaci. Woo! Jaci, can you share a little bit about yourself and share about your real estate journey?
Sure. Kind of do the abbreviated version, I guess. So yeah, I've been working in real estate, doing co-living really for the last I guess it's going on 8 years now. So we started in 2017, started with co-living. So we started with house hacking, bought a house, decided to rent out all of the rooms in it, and created all of the methods, all of the like systems, all of the everything in order to manage the co-living house, and like went from there, bought the next one and the next one, and kind of kept going. So got a couple of co-living houses up here in Colorado that I'm an investor on. I was managing quite a few for a while. We now have a manager who actually manages them for us, which is great. And kind of been just doing my thing. I've also been part of the sub 2 community for I just hit a year, I think, as a member of sub 2, and also the top tier TC community and the Gator community. So I've been very fortunate to be able to join those and meet all of the wonderful people in those communities as well. So
You're connected and involved in a lot of things.
trying.
So why real estate? Why would you get into real estate? Why did you choose to get into real estate?
Oh man. So I was I still am technically, but I was doing IT contracts and stuff. So working with like hospitals, doing IT, all of that stuff. And like when you work in IT, especially as a consultant, they pay you a fair amount of money, but you don't get to use any of it because you're constantly traveling and you like have no life, and it sucks. So I needed somewhere to put it. A friend of mine randomly out of the blue was like, "Hey, want to buy a house with me and like rent it?" And I was like, sure, that sounds like a fun idea. So we started looking at houses in Colorado. I was living in Iowa at the time, but he was in Colorado. So started looking at houses in Colorado, and initially we're looking at like long-term rentals, a random, like I think it was a 4-bedroom house with an ADU in the backyard, and it looked really great, but we figured out that we couldn't quite hit the mortgage with just a regular long-term rental. So we started looking at other houses and bigger houses, and we found the perfect house. It actually was a 5.3, I think, and we were able to turn it into a 7-bedroom with like a door, I think. And that was it. So it was incredible that we were able to do like very, very little work, turn it into a 7.3. And I ended up buying it as a primary resident and moving into one of the bedrooms. And then since my business partner had lived in co-ops, and I'd lived in like co-living situations in the Midwest, and he'd lived in actual co-ops in Texas, specifically the ones that were founded by the Whole Foods people. So like they've been around since the 70s, right? So they have all the systems, everything's good to go. So we started implementing some of those systems into our house. So we've got like this nice cork board with a chore wheel on it that turns every week. We put together all of the systems. Like we put together new systems on top of like the systems that we had seen used in previous like locations. But the primary thing that we borrowed from the co-ops was their conflict resolution process. So we just borrowed that right out of the co-ops and like started using it with all of our houses too. But when we started too, though, we started like figuring out, this will work better if we, color code some of the stuff in the kitchen. It'll work better if we start like labeling certain things, and if we assign certain things, and if we so like we have specific in every fridge there's a shelf for every resident. There's a pantry space for every resident. We have color coded systems so that if you want to like leave stuff sitting out on the counter or in the kitchen or whatever, people can leave stuff sitting around. So we've got all of these systems in place, and we've got all of the all the stuff that we had learned from living in other houses. So we started just learning and going from there. And real estate is such a great investment in the first place, especially like here in the US, where it values appreciate like crazy. So we got very fortunate with Colorado too, since like we bought in 2017, so prices just went up from there. Yeah.
And then didn't hurt that this past July they passed that law that doesn't restrict you on how many people have to be, you know, related underneath one roof.
Yeah.
So that helped out a lot.
Yeah, it
Um,
really.
Go ahead.
Oh no.
Oh, so you said 7.3. Is there a special, or is there a minimum bed bathroom count? What is there a certain ratio you like to keep um, when you purchase houses? And then the last thing is you mentioned conflict conflict resolution.
Mhm.
Um, which would be, if you could expand on that. The reason why I bring that up is when I tell people I'm doing co-living, that's one of the biggest things that people say, like, what if you don't like the person, and who would want to live together, and what's the benefit? And so you can share that some with everybody, and I'm sure they'd appreciate it and learn from it, because I try to convince people that co-living is a great strategy, and I must not be explaining it well enough, because some people say, oh, that sounds like a great idea, and others are like, yeah, I'm just not feeling it.
I totally get that. Yeah, there's a lot of different parts to all of those questions. So as far as the ratios go, yes, we try to aim for no more than 3 adults per bathroom or per shower, really. So there's a lot of houses that you'll get into. There'll be a half bath and like several full baths or 3/4 baths or whatever. We try to make sure that there are only 3 adults per shower, because once you get over that number, it starts to get kind of gross, and people just they don't take as well good a care of it. And we don't want any crowding situations with showers, because some people are like, in a lot of our houses, most people are on different schedules. Like we'll have 2 people on the night shift, one on third shift, one on first, one who works from home. It's all over the place.
Right.
So we try to keep that ratio for that. As far as like minimum number of rooms in a house and stuff like that, I personally don't think it's worth it to have less than 5 bedrooms in a house. Like once you hit the number like 4, you've got people who probably can find their own roommates and probably like will get a better deal if they go and get their own house with their own roommates. Plus, when you have that low of a number, it's so much work to manage people and to manage personalities and to manage like, because you are like, even with the conflict resolution, even with doing, we do household led property management. So we try and let the houses kind of really distinguish themselves, like have their own autonomy for a lot, to an extent. Obviously we're not
Right.
like letting them do a ton of stuff, but like they have a lot of autonomy, and we don't want to have to manage that on a super small scale. We've also found, because we have one house that is 4 bedrooms, and we found that that is the hardest one to fill. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the location, but like it's weird. The sweet spot is definitely in the 7 to 8 bedroom range. Although obviously, if you get like 10 bedrooms in a house, awesome. We do have one that has 10 also, but that one is set up as a women's and children's home. So it just depends on the house itself, because like we're not building these from scratch. We're buying generally single family homes that are set up in a certain way. So there's only you kind of have to work with what you've got, so
Sure.
everything like meshes really well. So I think the sweet spot is 6, 7, 8 bedrooms. I've lived in like an 8 bedroom house, 7 bedroom houses, and I like it. I think it's great. And I've lived in at least 3 of the houses that we have for a year each, and so has my business partner, and so had our property manager, and actually both of our property managers have. So it helps to be able to live in the houses. We live our systems. We know that they work. I mean, it's great. And as far as the conflict resolution goes, I mean, that's a whole thing on its own. But what we use is a 5-on-5 process. It's really just teaching adults how to communicate with one another in a respectful way. That's like just a very, very basic process. Like, I'm going to talk for 5 minutes. You can talk for 5 minutes, respond for 5 minutes, respond for 5 minutes. And then you have your normal back and forth after that for a minute, just to like figure out, what did we resolve? And then we also have, the next step. If nothing gets resolved, or like a week goes by and there's still a problem, we can bring in a mediator, and stuff like that. But that's really all it is like it's giving someone that 5 minutes of space where they're not going to get interrupted. They're going to be able to say their piece and see what's happening. And it's not just for conflict resolution. We've actually used it for communication just in general. I have
Right.
had roommates come up to me and be like, hey, can we have a 5-on-5? And they just want to tell me like how their day was, or like, hey man, I'm having a hard time right now, like this is what's going on in my life, I just need somebody to talk to. And that's great too. Like I personally, I like having that kind of a relationship with my roommates, and having like when I'm just their roommate, not when I'm their property manager or their landlord, but
Right.
when they're just my roommate, I want to have that kind of relationship with my roommates. I want to know like what's going on in their life, and like if I can be helpful and like ease the burden, like absolutely. So we don't just use it as a conflict resolution method. We also use it as a like, here's how you can, build a deeper connection with your roommates.
Right. So, one of the things that I won't say struggle with, but try to work out when I'm evaluating a home is parking. Is parking ever an issue with you? And when you're purchasing homes, because not everybody has a car, right? Do you look at public transportation being close by? Is that a concern of yours? Is that a check mark or on your checklist when you're considering buying homes?
Absolutely. So it's it kind of depends on the demographic you're going for. Most of our houses are in middle class neighborhoods. We're aiming for like middle class folks. Almost everyone in our houses has their own car. So for the most part, public transportation doesn't really make a huge impact on where we're looking, but it does make a little bit of a difference. Like if we can have something that's closer to a bus stop, awesome. If you're aiming for a lower socioeconomic class, you absolutely need to look for those bus stops, for public transportation, for whatever's available, because like having, especially like those rideshare, the bikes and stuff too that are around now, having
Right.
those around is super helpful. If it just depends on the demographic you're going for, but 100% we do look for parking for all of our houses. Our goal is to have control of as many parking spots as there are rooms in the house. So if it's a 7-bedroom house, I want to have 2 driveway spots at least. I want to have like 3-4 spots along the side, along the curb. I want to make sure that we can accommodate everybody's car without parking in front of the neighbor's house. Because we have definitely had bad neighbors. So
Right. Have
honestly,
you
we've
ever had to modify the driveway in order to make room for people?
Um, no, but we've gotten very lucky in that like 1 or 2 of the houses that we bought have had nice gravel like areas right next to the driveway where we've been able to put more parking spots there. So we haven't actually had to put in the actual gravel ourselves, thankfully. But yeah, it's been nice to be able to modify a little bit. So
Earlier, you mentioned that you sometimes have, families in your house, which is kind of against, I don't say against, but the common use is, one person per room. How does that work when you have somebody with child or multiple kids? How do you guys work that out?
So that's actually a very special circumstance. We don't allow minors in any of our normal co-living houses, and we don't. If the bedroom doesn't have a private bathroom, so like how a master suite will have its own private bathroom, we'll allow couples or like 2 adults to share bedrooms with that private bath, but we only allow 1 adult in any of the other bedrooms if there's not a private bathroom. The one exception is we do have a home for women and children, so like it's a recovery house, and that's really the difference, is that it's a recovery house meant for people who are either getting out of domestic abuse situations or recovering from addiction to whatever it is. So it's a special circumstance, and it does involve different types of setup in the house. And I can point you towards like Renee down in Denver actually has so much more experience on the recovery house stuff than I do, that like she's a great resource. I will hook
I
you up
know
with her too.
exactly who you're talking about. Renee is great, great
Yeah.
person. I'll have her on eventually. Um, so it's funny you bring her up because I thought you were almost, or at least one or two of your houses were the same space as her, because she focuses, I think, on sober living. Is that not something that you focus on too, or do you kind of have a more diverse dy- dynamic or demographic that you aim for?
Yeah, we actually do um more aim for a generalized demographic as opposed to sober living. We do have a sober living house. We have the women's and children's house, but those are the only 2 that we have that aren't like just generalized co-living.
Right.
And with those houses too, like men aren't allowed to stay in the women and children house. And with our sober living house is a woman's house also, but I mean, obviously you can have men's houses and you can have men and children houses and stuff like that. There's so many different types that you can do, but again, it's different types of you want to have different not facilities, but programs available. So like we don't provide a sober program ourselves. We work with the local facilities who are able to do that. So we make sure to like contact the rehabilitation centers in town or the domestic abuse centers in town and stuff like that to make sure that that our residents have those resources. So because we aren't qualified to offer that, you know.
Right. Interesting. I lost my train of thought on that. So you have co-living, sober, and women's homes. Oh, that's what my question was. Do you have co-ed properties, or do you stick to gender diversity, I guess?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I know that it's at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, especially with co-living. Is and we do co-ed, and actually every single one of our non-specialized co-living houses is co-ed. I've only lived in the co-ed houses, and I'm a 5 foot tall like woman. I'm not a big person, and I have never ever been afraid in any of our houses. That said, we do have a very good screening process. We background check absolutely everybody. We have a personal interview. We have them. They have to come for a tour, whether it's virtual or not. Ideally it's in person, but so they're either meeting the property manager, who for a long time was me, or they're meeting a representative from the house. And like that person who lives in the house or the property manager, you can get a vibe off of somebody pretty fast, and especially women have like a sixth sense for that a lot of the time. So like I've never had a problem in any of our houses, and it does make a difference though. You have to have that screening process in place, and you have to be very strict with it. So
Are there any houses that have certain amenities that you would steer away from, like having a pool or having a fire pit in the background or in the backyard? I mean, um, having a lot of grass to maintain. Are there anything like that that you try to steer away from?
yeah, so we're in Colorado, so I've actually never had a house with a pool. I can't really speak to that one. I think I think pools would be fine as long as you like are pretty careful with them. And I wouldn't have a pool in a house with kids, but other than that, like, or at least as a landlord, I wouldn't want to. But I don't know. I haven't heard of any issues with that offhand. But other amenities though, we had a house where and I was living in it at the time. One of the guys wanted to build a fire pit, so I was like, cool, call dig safe and like let's do it. So fire pits, I mean, we've never had issues with them. They've always been really good. We have had, I mean, having a lot of, I don't like lawns. I actually am very, I'm really into like the conservation stuff. I actually co-own a nonprofit based in Hawaii that's very focused on like conservation and agroforestry. So like having lawns, I think isn't necessary because you can xeriscape. So here, I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a second.
That's
um,
fine.
the thing about lawns is you have to take care of them. You have to water them. You have to mow them. They're a ton of work. They're a ton of maintenance, and they cause drought, especially in areas where there's already water issues. So, I mean, I would advocate every single time to xeriscape your lawn, because xeriscaping, it's going to cost a little bit up front, probably about as much as a year's worth of lawn maintenance, and then you'll never have to pay for it again. It takes care of itself. It's zero maintenance. That's why they call it xeriscaping. It's
Right.
great. It's wonderful. And it's better for the environment. It's all native species. But anyway, that's my little soapbox. So please xeriscape your lawns. But that's the thing is like we do a chore system in our houses, and we try to get people like we do successfully most of the time get everyone to like do their chores every week. And one of the chores is doing the lawn. And we have found that like far and away it's the hardest one to get people to actually do. And it's like mowing the lawn and trimming the bushes and trimming the like, no, we don't have them trim the trees, but like the like weed whacking and stuff like that. It's just a pain to do. And I don't personally like doing it. I've definitely had friends and residents who love doing that work, and great, that's awesome. But like, it is so hard to get people to do it that if you can get away with like xeriscaping your lawn instead, I would do that. For
So
sure.
there's a system that I've learned for co-living, and one of the things that they suggest to do is when it's that person's turn to do something that they don't want to do, they could technically kind of pay out of it, right? So they could pay like some kind of fee where you get like, for example, let's say it was their turn to clean the kitchen, you can pay for a cleaner to come in to do that week or that person's due. Is that something that you guys, excuse me, offer, or you just kind of allow them to resolve the problem themselves?
It depends. So there's two ways that we go about it. One of them is we usually encourage them to just trade with one another. So like if it's my week for the lawn and I really don't want to do the lawn, I'll figure out who has like a chore, either who loves to do the lawn or who has a chore that I would much rather do, and see if they'll trade me.
Right.
And that's what we've had a lot of in most of the houses. The issue that you, or at least that we've run into with offering people to just buy their way out of it, is that if not everybody is doing it, it's not going to cover the cost of like a cleaner to come in and do the kitchen. So
Gotcha.
it's either like everyone has to agree to like pay the extra however much it is for a cleaner to come through, or you got to trade it around. So it depends. Honestly, I think it's worth it to have a cleaner to come through once a month or something, or once a quarter, just to make sure everything gets deep cleaned every once in a while, because it's hard to get people to do that.
Sure.
But yeah, if it just depends on your preference. Sometimes it's easier as a manager to have someone else come through and do all of the cleaning, so you don't have to worry about it, because it is a pain in the butt to like try and get everyone to actually do their chores.
Right. Like young children, right?
Yeah, yeah, for real.
So, and you said that that's a chore wheel that you have. Is that, I'm assuming, in the kitchen common area where people can see it?
Yep, yep. And in all of our houses too, I'd like to add that like we always leave the living room. We always want there to be a common space available for people. So like we have most of the houses all still have their dining room, they have their living room, they have their kitchen. So in the dining room or living room, we'll have the if there's usually not wall space in the kitchen, but yeah, we'll have that big chore board there with the like wheel on it and everybody's name, and we try and take everybody's picture and put it up on the board too, just so you can see your roommates, because there it's quite common for someone to move in and they'll only have met like one other person who lives in the house at that point, and they'll be like, I have no idea who's supposed to be here and who's not. So it's nice to have that picture up there. But yeah, having it in those places, but having that common space is so helpful, because like we don't have third spaces anymore. There's not places people can go just to exist without paying to be there, especially not indoors. So having that area, and even just like in Colorado, I mean, we have winter. You want to have somewhere you walk in the front door to sit down and take your shoes off, like
Right.
it's a matter of, this is where people live. It's not just like in the front door and like straight to your bedroom and that's the only space that's yours forever, like that doesn't feel like home, and it doesn't make it conducive to people wanting to stay there for very long. So we've found that we have extremely like way longer tenancy, like longer terms of tenancy than other co-living houses, because we provide that common area. So like our average stay is over 2 years.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah.
And you bring up so many questions, just for the audience, because I'm almost kind of like no, I am a fan of yours, right? I always lean on you for advice or better way of doing things, just to share with the people that are watching this, right? For example, the different names of rooms. Instead of just calling them 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever, they call it the diamond room, the ruby room, or whatever. Kind of have a little bit of fun with it. I thought that was great.
Mhm.
Uh, and then most people don't allow the use of the garage, use as common storage for all of the inhabitants. You put like a shelving system in there, which I think is a great idea, just to make sure I bring a lot of that stuff out. Um, so keep common area. The whole point of co-living is to build community, which I think is awesome, that you're making sure that there's spaces for people to um, commune, right,
Yeah.
with the other people in the house. So one question that keeps coming up, and I've had this in a couple of Facebook groups that I'm in, somebody actually got really upset because they felt that, because the whole point for me for co-living is trying to provide affordable housing for people, because it's very expensive to buy your own house. It's very expensive if you try to get an apartment, but sharing that cost, and mind you, you're paying all the utilities as the owner of the property, right? Yeah, so you're talking about water, electrical, and cable or internet, right? And so how do you determine what's a fair rent for a room. I know me personally, I use the HUD website, and I also use roomies.com, because those are two places where I can see what the need is for that area and what people are willing or are advertising at the time, and then I can also see what the government says is a fair market for a one bedroom, one bath, or a studio apartment. So, how do you guys determine what is fair and affordable for people in your areas that you're in?
For sure, yeah. And all of those sources that you looked at are great. Those are really good options to look at too, to determine what you want to charge. We typically will also look at other either one bedrooms or efficiency apartments in the same area, and subtract about 20 to 30%, and that's the range that we tend to aim for. So like here in northern Colorado, most of our rooms are in the 800 range. So
So,
yeah.
let's see. What else do I want to ask you? Got that. Got that. Got that. So, share an exciting or positive story that you've had in your experience being an investor, doing co-living, and then maybe in not so good. The whole channel is good, bad, and ugly. So, something good or something bad or ugly.
Oh man, I've got several
Hey,
interesting.
you're not limited. You can share away.
All right, all right, all right. But I can also like touch on. I kind of want to go back and like touch on your. You mentioned the garage aspect
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. You can talk about
So
whatever you want. This is your time. I'm just here to
awesome.
listen.
Okay. Just touching on the garage though, we do. I love that we do this. And especially here in Colorado, I mean, people are very outdoorsy, and we put in every garage, we'll put like 3 of these big like steel 5 rack or 5 tier racks in there, so that people can have like 1 or 2 shelves for their gear. Like you have backpacks, you've got like snow gear, whatever it is that you've got. People tend to have stuff that they don't necessarily want to keep in their room, and there's a lot of rooms that just don't have closets in them either, so like it's just nice to have that little bit of extra storage. And one of the nice things too is the racks aren't massive, and even a single car garage has enough space for you to put like a small car in front of that as well as the racks. So what we end up doing a lot of the time is we'll get all those racks, we'll make sure that everybody has a space for like their bicycles if they have bikes or whatever it is. And then we will rent out that like car size space. But what we found, and actually honestly I would encourage this, is that most people use that as personal storage instead of car storage. And the reason being is like if you park your car in the garage, like there's a really good chance that somebody's going to block you in. I mean, we try to tell them not to. Like if somebody rents the garage space, then you're not allowed to park in front of the garage. So what
Right.
most people will end up doing is like they'll rent the garage space, they'll park their own car in front of the garage space so that nobody's blocking them in if they actually wanted to park in there. But for the most part, it's used for personal storage, and that seems to work out really well for people. And it's way cheaper than renting a storage unit, because like those are getting pricey these days too.
Right.
So yeah, it's been nice. So I know you asked about something, or you mentioned something else, and I'm like, what was it? I don't know. But yeah, the garage space tends to help a lot. But what else? But good good and bad stories. For whatever reason, I'm getting bad stories coming up a lot faster than the good
Hey,
ones.
that's
But
fine.
but we do, like, I have had one there was one house that I lived in, and one of the roommates in the house, super nice guy. He was so helpful with like absolutely everything. Like anytime anything came up, he would always like he would help with everything. He built a fire pit, like didn't just like get a little fire pit. He dug a like 3 foot deep hole in the backyard and like lined it with bricks and like made a fire pit. And it was
Oh, wow.
so cool. And we enjoyed the crap out of that. It was so much fun. So like you can get some really amazing people in the houses. And like one of the other houses, this dude was a professional chef, and he would like cook these meals for the whole house. He was amazing. It was like you can get some really really cool people in those houses. So it's just really awesome when you have like people who are super into like
What they
being
do.
a part. Yeah, what they do and being a part of the community. They're fantastic. So less good stories. We've honestly had more bad neighbors than bad tenants. So like one of the bad neighbors that we had, like, and this is a reason to like really vet your neighborhood. We bought this beautiful house. It was set up as a kind of an aftermarket duplex. Like they'd added a second door, they'd put in wall, whatever. So we ended up reopening it back up and having it be a big 8-bedroom house. And it was a corner lot, and it was really nice. And there was no HOA, so we were like, okay, this is gonna be fine, right? Our next door neighbors on one side turned out to be extremely aggressive, to the point that like if anyone would park like even just a little too close to their property, the dude would come out screaming at people. He came out and screamed at our contract. We were redoing the windows, and he came and screamed at our contractors. Like it was nuts. Like we called the cops on him. He called the cops on us. The cops came over and were like, dude, you're yelling at these people who are doing nothing. You need to stop. So like really take a good look at your neighbors, because sometimes you just get people who do not like you. I mean, he had his reasons, and honestly, like he had a rough time too, but still, you just don't want to get into those situations.
I've had a situation like that. Neighbor car was parked in what I would call public parking, right? It's on the street, not on their grass, not on their driveway, just in the street. And they're like, "You're parking in my spot." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? That spot is not yours. It's public parking. It's on the street." "No, that's mine. It's in front of my house." No, it's not. But we'll agree not to disagree, kind of thing. But it was an issue for almost a year and a half.
Oh wow.
So, what was the moral of the story? We just moved away. Right? We just said that's enough. We'll just not be, because it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't a pleasant experience, and it was easier for us to move than for them to move. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I had another question that popped in my head, and the reason why this popped in my head is it's kind of you brought up being in Colorado, and we have cold winters, or colder than most places. How do you guys handle temperature control? Because some people are get cold easy, some people get hot easy. Some people like it at 69 or 65, some people want it at 80. How do you manage that?
That's a good question. We haven't had to do too much on the management front for that. One of the primary issues we ended up having is that like when the windows in a house are really bad, the temperature in the house is just all over the place. So honestly, like we just replace the windows. We go through and try and make sure all of those things are like fixed first. But we've never had to lock any of the thermostats or anything like that. We do keep a really close eye on it though. So like if every house has a general not temperature, but amount that we end up seeing on the bill for electricity or for gas
Sure.
or whatever it is. And we try to watch that. Like we watch it every month, make sure it's not like fluctuating a lot. And like sometimes it will. And when it does, we immediately are on that house like, hey guys, what's going on? Are you leaving the door open? Are the windows all open? What are you doing? Like, come on. So we do keep track of it, but we've never had to do much more than like, knock on the door and be like, hey guys, what are you doing? Let's keep an eye on the temperatures, because if you guys keep this up, we're going to charge you more, so
Right.
but
So I know another question that came up. One of the ways I was taught to manage the tenants inside the house is to create an LLC and to make them members of the LLC. Do you use that philosophy when you have your tenants, or do you actually have a lease per tenant? And yeah, we'll just start right there.
yeah, I've heard of the membership method. We talked to our lawyers and we're trying to figure out whether or not that was the best route to take, and they told us that they wouldn't be able to defend it in court. So we were like, all right, fine, we're not doing that. So no, we don't use the membership method. We actually have a lease for every single person. We typically, or like up until recently, we'd only been using month-to-month leases. And even with a month-to-month lease, we still have our average tenancy at like 2 years, which is pretty great. But yeah, we typically do month-to-month leases. We do offer longer term leases now that are 3, 6, 12 months, and so on. But yeah, we do a lease, and we try to make it extremely explicit. So like even in every single lease, it'll talk about like, if you leave your personal belongings in common spaces and they get like stolen or broken, that is not our fault. Like you are basically waiving your right to blame us if your stuff gets broken or stolen from a common space. And we have all sorts of other stipulations in there, about we have a household covenant on every single house. So and it's really just common sense, like, don't go into other people's rooms without asking. Don't like, be a jerk. Don't steal. Don't, it's common.
Right.
You would think, but it does have other things like, hey, this house has, quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. on weekdays and da da da. So we make everyone sign the household covenant for with their lease, and we have addendums, obviously, for like we allow pets in our houses, and I know a lot of houses don't, and I can talk about that for a while too. But we have a pet addendum that specifically says, that they agree to these rules and stuff like that, because pets are, I would not live without my pets. Like I will not give them up for anything whatsoever. And I know there's a ton of people who are just like me in that regard. So we allow pets, but we do have very, very strict rules on them. So like they're not allowed to free roam, especially not if nobody's there. So like we don't have somebody's random cat running around the house or somebody's dog, you're not allowed to leave them loose in the backyard if you're not supervising them. So like, if you can't go to work and leave your dog in the backyard, stuff like that. So we try to really like mitigate any kind of like issues that might come up. Obviously things do still come up, but we'll take care of it.
I'm biased to dogs, so I've had experiences with cats that decide they want to mark their territory, and it's not a pleasant experience, or trying to clean that up, especially when that person leaves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those. I commend you for doing that, because you're given. I know, for example, my mom, right? She has a support dog, so some people need that, and it's one of those things. If you can't let them all in, how do you just let people? So for me, up to this point, it's been a none, right, all or none type of thing. So I just go with a none to keep it safe.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that you are doing that and allowing people to, and it seems like it's been working for you, I may have to maybe revisit that, because with like you, I can understand how people would want to have, if you want to make it their home, right? Having a pet would be good, but I also think you would probably have to limit that to probably one per tenant, because you get too many, especially being in a room that could be a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, our limit is two non-caged animals per room, so like a cat and a dog, or 2 dogs or 2 cats or whatever. We've had people live there with like rats in a cage, which is totally fine, or a lizard or whatever. But generally the limit ends up coming from local regulations. So like a lot of our in Loveland, for example, where some of our houses are, the limit on dogs is you can only have 4 dogs in one residential property in town. So once we do a first come first serve, once we hit that limit, like, sorry, you can't have your pet here anymore, or not anymore, but we can't move in with another pet. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
just wait till my next one opens up and I can get you in that one, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. And I mean, like we, in some of the houses too, like this particular room cannot have, because cats sometimes do mark. I've honestly seen more issues with dogs than with cats, but it just depends. Yeah. But like in one of the houses, it's like, okay, this room is a designated pet room and this room is not, because, carpet versus not carpet or something like that.
Sure.
So yeah, we'll designate certain rooms, or, we'll have that limit that's basically from the city itself or to that effect. We also have breed restrictions on dogs. I am actually like professionally certified as a dog trainer. So
I need my dog. I got 2 that really need some training.
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
There you go.
I would love to. I love dogs, but yeah, no, we do have breed restrictions though, because I'm not worried about dogs with humans, I'm not worried about like any of that kind of thing. It's dogs with other dogs. So like there are
Right.
some dogs that are just very, very dog aggressive. And if you can't guarantee the safety of another animal in the house, then you just can't have that breed in there. So
That's fair. Right.
it sucks,
Think
but
about everybody else being, trying to think of safety for all, right?
yeah,
To include their pets, which I think is awesome.
right.
I had a question pop in my head, and now it popped right back out. Um, let's see. We talked about your journey. We talked about the good and bad. We talked about pricing. We talked about
If you want to hear another like bad one, it's not really a bad one. It's more of a like red flags on tenants.
yeah,
Um,
really.
so sure. So one of the things that I started looking for after it happened once is there like as a manager when I was doing management, I'm terrible as a property manager because I'm too nice. I want to like make everybody super happy and make them all comfortable, and I want to be their friend, and that's a terrible idea. Don't do that. But when I started, I didn't know that. So I was trying to like make people super comfortable. We had this one girl get a hold of us and was really interested in a room. And she just asked tons and tons of questions. And like to a point, that's great. Like I want you to ask questions about your roommates and stuff. But when they start asking very, very specific questions, like, oh, what if somebody cooks X, Y, or Z in the kitchen and it smells? Like, what do I do then? And this, that, like the more specific the questions start to get about the other roommates, the more that's a red flag that person's probably not a good fit for the house.
No.
Because yeah, when we ended up letting that person move in, and it turned out to be a very terrible fit. She like caused so many problems amongst like the roommates, amongst like just herself. She like got very aggressive with me. She got aggressive with everybody else, and it turned out to be a bad thing. So
So that reminds me of a question I was going to ask you earlier. So in that situation, right, quote unquote bad tenant,
mhm.
um, would you A, move her to another place, B, say this is just not a good fit, and when that person's lease is up, you let them know it's time for them to find another place. And then kind of a caveat to that question would be, have you had to evict anybody due to either non-payment or because they just couldn't follow the rules?
Yeah, no, that's all good questions. So we, in a lot of those situations, because we have that month-to-month lease, thankfully most people, excuse me, will self-select, and like they'll oust themselves by the end of that first second month. They'll be like, you know what, this isn't a good fit. I don't want to live here anymore, and I'm out. So it gives them a nice out to like let themselves out of the house. A lot of the time too, in those situations when someone's not a good cultural fit, the other tenants will also kind of push them out. So it's they help self-select. We definitely have had to non-renew quite a few times for people just not paying, which sucks. But it worked out really well. It's a lot easier to non-renew than it is to evict. But we have actually evicted usually for non-payment. I think we've only evicted twice in like 7 years.
So what happens if you had a if you choose not to renew, and let's say a person doesn't have another place to go, right? And they're kind of like refusing to leave, I guess is the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
I mean, is that then considered an eviction, or do you just have to call the cops and say, hey, look, this person did not renew. We did not renew this person's leave, so they need to be. Um, we've asked them to leave. They haven't. They're not choosing to leave after we asked them to. So can you help us remove them? Is that how that usually works?
Um, yeah, usually if you have to get the police involved, I mean, if they're really just sitting in there refusing to leave, then yes, you have to get the police involved. And then it becomes a whole eviction process. There are other situations where it could become an eviction process, but typically speaking, at least in my experience, we haven't had too many people sitting there refusing to like leave the premises, because
Right.
once they get to the point of either not paying or they're not a good cultural fit, like the other tenants are not going to sit there and let them just
Be
squat,
there.
you know? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
So I remember what I was going to bring up. So one of the things that is awesome about you is you are teaming with some other folks and doing challenges to teach people how to do this for a living. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the my business partner started doing the co-living challenge, a co-living challenge. It's definitely geared towards people who are a little bit more new to the real estate market than it is for people who have really been in real estate for a while. But yeah, we've started doing co-living challenges. I believe they're happening monthly right now, and just it's just the basics of like, here's the type of house that we look for. These 4 2s or 4 3s and 5 3s, stuff like that. Here's the parking type situation that we're looking for. Here's the kitchen setup that we're looking for, and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, we started doing that, and it's been pretty entertaining. I haven't actually gotten to the helping out too much on the camera side of it, but I did end up writing a lot of the documentation and stuff that you end up seeing, so it's been cool. And then yeah, my business partner also has the course that you can go through for actually learning our entire method of here's how we do it. And we do household-led property management, which is a little bit different, where we someone comes to us with an issue in the house, and we end up going back to them being like, all right, did you use the 5-on-5 process? Did you, like, how did it go? What was the resolution? And we also do and we teach you in those courses too, like, here's all the stuff that we do for all of our houses. So like, we aren't just putting people in the house and then being like, have fun, bye. We come through every single month, and like, we restock all of the common area supplies. So like, we're making sure there's toilet paper, we're making sure that there's dish soap and hand soap and new sponges for the sink, or whatever it is that's around. So like, anything that's a common area supply that we don't want tenants to have to fight with one another to figure out who's going to buy it this month, we're taking care of those things. So like, we come through every single month, make sure the house is clean, make sure that nothing's broken, we're taking care of the maintenance, we're taking care of those restocking things, stuff like that. So we go through in our courses and stuff, and I don't know how much of it we go through in the challenge, but at least in the course, we for sure go through everything that's on that list. Like, here's everything that you want to check for, your restocking list, and like, even house setup stuff too. So we'll go through and teach you, like, here's exactly how we set up a house. And it can be a lot easier than that, or cheaper than than you think too. Cause like, for setting up houses new, we're not buying new couches. We're not buying new, like, kitchen tables. We're going to Goodwill. We're going to the Restore. The Habitat for Humanity Restore is amazing, and everyone should support them because they have fantastic furniture, and you can get really, really cheap, really good stuff there. So just
that was a good thing you shared with me. I was like, oh, I'm taking that.
It's fantastic. So yeah, all of the furniture stuff, we go there for that. And we don't furnish bedrooms, so we don't have to worry about the beds or like a dresser or a lamp or anything in the bedrooms. And the reason that we don't furnish the bedrooms, because we honestly started with it. We started with furnishing every single bedroom, and we were so proud of ourselves. We're like, look at these, they're fantastic. Within 6 months, everyone had asked us to remove the furniture so that they could bring in their own. We were like, all right. So yeah, but we found though is it's a demographic thing though. Since we're aiming for that middle class, they typically have their own furniture, and that's probably partly why they stay longer too, is nobody wants to move a bed or a dresser more than once in a year, so they typically stay longer when they bring their own furniture, especially that heavy stuff.
So one thing I want to make sure is, if people were interested in signing up for the course that you and your partner train, where would they go to sign up or get more information?
Sure. We actually have colivingchallenge.com. So if you wanted to see the challenge, that is our website. And the course is on livingsmithpro.com. So
awesome. Yep. So I usually end my podcast with haves and needs. Obviously, you have a wealth of knowledge. That's a given. So if somebody wanted to kind of like partner with you, what are some of the needs that you are looking for right now?
Oh, goodness. Well, actually, I am about to start working. I don't know if you know David Ross, but I'm about to start working with him.
He told me what you guys are doing, and I said, I'm talking to Jackie on Saturday. I'm jumping in on that initiative right now.
Yeah, we're starting. We're gonna start doing some work out in Charlotte, so it's gonna be super exciting. I don't really know what I need yet. I'll know soon, but I don't know quite yet. But yeah, I do. I'm happy to consult. I'm happy to like help people learn more about the co-living space, learn more about creating community within their co-living houses and how to set things up. I have my own little website. It's okgcreativesolutions.com, but it's not got a ton of stuff on it right now. But yeah, if anybody wants to reach out to me, they're welcome to. I am happy to help individuals. I'm happy to jump on calls with people.
So just so in case people might have missed this, what she's talking about is another, and if you guys watched the video on Tuesday of this past week, I had David Ross on talking about co-living. Jaci, with her vast knowledge, is going to train David and somebody of his choosing to be an operator for these type of properties. That's one of the things as an investor you'll see that is really hard to find, is a good operator, so that you can be a business owner and not necessarily another job. So if you're trying to get out of your W-2, you don't want to leave your W-2 and then become a operator of multiple properties. The intent is to have somebody that can manage and operate them for you. Jaci's done this for, like she said, 7 years. And she's taken that experience, sharing that with David, so that David can train, or she could train the person directly to help David manage his properties without having to replace one job with another. And that's why I said I'm jumping in on that initiative, because I love Jaci. She has so much knowledge. So I'm going to ask her to pour that knowledge into me so that I can train one or two people, because I can tell you right now, doing co-living in Colorado, outside of Jaci, there's only one other person that I know that's actually able and willing to manage a co-living property. And I know they're fairly new, probably less than a year old, doing it. And I don't even know how many properties they have. It's been probably 4 to 6 months since I even talked to him. I need to reach out and, see how they're doing. But there is a need out there. So if you're looking for a business to start, that would be a great one to get into, and then leverage Jaci's knowledge. As she said, she's willing to share and help. And I can tell you there's a great need out there, because this is a new strategy, but it is growing very quickly. And I should say not new, because people have been doing it for years, decades. It just has a name now. And you can tell that it's catching momentum, because now there's a platform, right? So, how short-term rentals has the platform of Airbnb, co-living now has a company called PassSplit that is being a platform for this strategy. So if you're interested, let me know. Leave a message or leave a comment. Any parting words, Jaci? Like, lessons learned. Wish one thing they could take away from this video, what would you hope that is?
I really hope that people take away from this video the fact that, like, you can have community in co-living houses. You don't have to shy away from it. You don't have to shy away from conflict. Like, that's what makes community, and it makes better places to live, and it makes happier tenants and happier managers. So, I mean, don't be afraid of creating that community and having people be able to have relationships with one another in the houses.
That's awesome. So you guys already know where you can find her and join the challenge, join the training. I can tell you from personal experience that you will not go wrong following Jaci. She's been a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of nuggets. I'm implementing everything she's taught me into my own personal business. So go out there, support her, learn how to do this the right way and not the wrong way, so that you can prosper and make a lot of money. Jaci, thank you so much for your time and coming on my podcast. Always an honor to speak with you, and looking forward to doing more business with you in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I love chatting with you. You are a phenomenal human, and I love chatting with you. So thank you so much. And yeah, hope to work with you soon. So
absolutely. And to the audience, peace out. We'll see you on the next episode.